The Cosmic Mirror, what Buddhism's view of universal destruction reveals about your daily anxiety. Let me ask you something that might sound strange at first. What if the reason you lie awake at 3 a.m. worrying about your career, your relationships, or whether you're wasting your life, what if that anxiety is actually connected to the same force that will one day tear apart entire galaxies? Stay with me here, because understanding this connection might completely transform how you handle stress, fear, and the relentless pressure to make everything in your life permanent and perfect. By the end of our conversation today, you're going to see why ancient Buddhist monks spent years contemplating the end of the universe, and why that practice might be the most practical thing you could do this week. Here's what nobody tells you about Buddhist cosmology. When we hear about meditation or mindfulness, we think it's about calming down, finding your center, being present. And sure, that's part of it, but the deepest practices in Buddhism involve something that sounds completely counterintuitive. They involve spending serious time thinking about destruction, endings, and the complete dissolution of everything you know. Not because Buddhists are pessimistic or morbid, but because they discovered something profound. The same mental habits that make you fear the end of the universe are the exact same habits that make you miserable on a Tuesday afternoon when your coffee gets cold or your project doesn't go as planned. Let's start with what's actually happening in your mind right now, in this moment. You're probably doing something that humans do constantly, so automatically that you don't even notice it. You're trying to make things solid. You're trying to make this moment, this feeling, this state of understanding last forever. Your mind is constantly reaching out, trying to grab onto experiences and freeze them in place. Got a good day? Your mind wants to lock that down, make it permanent, ensure it never changes. Had a moment of clarity? Quick, better preserve it, bottle it up, make sure it stays exactly like this. And that grasping, that constant attempt to freeze reality into something permanent, that's what Buddhists call the root of suffering. Now here's where the cosmic scale comes in, and this is where it gets really interesting. Buddhist texts describe something called a kalpa, and trying to understand this time frame will break your brain in the most useful way possible. Imagine the hardest mountain you can think of, solid granite, towering miles into the sky. Every 100 years, once per century, a tiny bird flies past this mountain and brushes it with a single feather, just the lightest touch. The amount of time it would take for that feather, touching once every 100 years, to completely erode that mountain down to dust, that's one kalpa, one cosmic cycle. And guess what? The universe goes through multiple kalpas: formation, duration, destruction, emptiness, then the whole thing starts over again. Why does this matter for your actual life? Because your mind does the exact same thing the universe does, just on a much faster timescale. Think about your day today. How many mini-universes have you already created and destroyed? You woke up and there was a universe of possibility for how the day would go. Maybe you had coffee, checked your phone, had some thoughts and feelings. That's the formation stage. Then there was a period where things felt stable, where you were just existing in your morning. That's the duration stage. Then something shifted. Maybe you got frustrating news, maybe you just got bored, and that whole universe of your peaceful morning started to contract and fall apart. That's the destruction stage. And then there was a gap, maybe just a few seconds, where you weren't quite in the old state, but hadn't yet formed the new one. That's the emptiness stage. Then a whole new universe of experience formed around whatever came next. This is happening constantly. You're creating and destroying entire worlds of experience every few minutes, and you don't even notice. But here's what you do notice. You notice suffering. You notice anxiety. And that suffering comes from the same place every single time. It comes from your resistance to the destruction phase. It comes from your desperate attempt to make the duration phase last forever. You get a moment of peace, and immediately your mind starts freaking out about losing it. You achieve something, and before you can even enjoy it, you're worried about maintaining it. You love someone, and underneath that love is this constant terror of loss. The Buddhist contemplation of cosmic destruction is actually training for this exact problem. When monks would sit and really meditate on the end of the universe, on everything dissolving back into potential, they weren't being dramatic or nihilistic. They were developing a very specific psychological capacity. They were training their minds to stop flinching away from endings. They were learning to stay present and peaceful, even when contemplating total dissolution. Because if you can stay calm while imagining the heat death of the universe, you can probably stay calm when your plans for Thursday fall apart. Let's go deeper into what this actually looks like in practice. The Buddhist texts describe 4 stages for the universe: formation, duration, destruction, and emptiness. But these aren't just cosmic stages. They're also describing every single process in your life. Your relationships go through these stages. Your career goes through these stages. Your sense of self goes through these stages multiple times a day. And here's the key insight that changes everything. The destruction stage isn't the problem. The emptiness stage isn't the problem. The problem is your relationship with these stages. The problem is that you're convinced you're supposed to live permanently in the duration stage, in the stability phase, and anything else is a failure. Think about how much energy you waste trying to prevent the destruction stage. How much anxiety, how much control, how much desperate planning and manipulation of circumstances. You're essentially trying to hold back the tide. You're trying to prevent what's already happening in every moment. And the cosmic perspective reveals just how futile this is. If entire galaxies can't maintain permanence, if the universe itself cycles through creation and destruction, what makes you think your carefully constructed identity, your perfect plans, your ideal circumstances should be any different? But here's where this gets practical rather than depressing. Once you really understand that everything is already in the process of forming and dissolving, you can make a radical shift. Instead of trying to stop the cycle, you can start working with it. You can start recognizing what stage you're in and responding appropriately. When you're in a formation stage, when new possibilities are emerging, you can engage with that energy of newness without grasping. When you're in a duration stage, when things are stable, you can appreciate it without clinging. When you're in a destruction stage, when things are falling apart, you can allow it without resistance. And when you're in an emptiness stage, in those gaps between states, you can rest there without immediately rushing to fill the space. This is what Buddhists call equanimity, and it's not what most people think it is. It's not being flat or emotionless or not caring about anything. It's having the flexibility to move through all the stages without getting stuck, without fighting reality. It's like surfing. You can't control the waves. You can't make them stop or stay the same, but you can learn to ride them. You can learn to work with the energy of change rather than exhausting yourself trying to fight it. Now let's connect this to something even more immediate, your fear of death. Most people spend enormous amounts of energy trying not to think about death. We build elaborate structures of distraction and denial. But Buddhism flips this completely. It suggests that regularly contemplating death, really sitting with the reality that this body and this personality are temporary, is actually liberating. Not in a morbid way, but in a way that cuts through all the trivial concerns that normally consume us. When you really absorb that your life is one brief flash in cosmic time, something interesting happens. The petty resentments start to look silly. The need to be right all the time loses its grip. The anxiety about whether you're impressive enough or successful enough starts to dissolve. Because you realize you're trying to make permanent what was never meant to be permanent in the first place. You're trying to build eternal monuments out of sand on a beach where the tide comes in every evening. But this doesn't lead to nihilism or giving up. This is crucial. When you stop wasting energy trying to make things permanent, you actually have more energy to engage fully with what's here right now. When you're not worried about preserving this moment forever, you can actually be in this moment. When you're not terrified of losing what you have, you can actually enjoy what you have. The cosmic perspective doesn't make life meaningless. It makes all the fake meanings fall away so you can connect with what actually matters. So what actually matters? Buddhism gives a clear answer: the quality of your mind right now, the kindness or cruelty in your heart right now, the wisdom or delusion you're operating from right now. Because those are the only things you ever actually have direct contact with. Everything else, all the external circumstances you're so worried about, all the outcomes you're trying to control, those are already in flux, already cycling through formation and destruction, whether you like it or not. Here's a practice you can try right now, today. At some point when you're feeling stressed or anxious, pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to make permanent right now? What am I trying to hold on to that's already changing? Maybe it's a feeling of being in control. Maybe it's a particular self-image. Maybe it's a relationship dynamic. Maybe it's just a sense of how things should be. Whatever it is, see if you can notice the grasping, the mental fist clenched around something that's already slipping away. And then, just as an experiment, see what happens if you relax that grip just a little bit. Not giving up or not caring, but just acknowledging the reality that this thing you're holding on to is part of the cosmic cycle of change. The Buddhist contemplation of universal destruction ultimately points to something that sounds paradoxical but becomes crystal clear through practice. The way to find peace isn't to make everything stable and permanent. The way to find peace is to develop a mind that can be stable and peaceful even while everything else is changing. It's to stop identifying your well-being with the duration stage of any particular circumstance and start identifying with the awareness that's present through all the stages. Think of it this way. The universe will go through its cycles regardless of how you feel about it. Stars will be born and die. Galaxies will form and dissolve. And on a much smaller scale, your thoughts will arise and pass away. Your feelings will come and go. Your circumstances will shift and change. All of this is already happening. The only question is, are you going to fight it every step of the way, or are you going to learn to dance with it? Are you going to exhaust yourself trying to freeze one moment of the dance? Or are you going to develop the flexibility to move through all the movements? This is why those ancient monks spent years contemplating cosmic destruction. They weren't escaping from life. They were training to engage with life more fully, more courageously, with less fear and more presence. They were developing the capacity to look directly at impermanence, at endings, at dissolution, and not flinch. And in not flinching, they found a freedom that doesn't depend on circumstances staying the same. So here's what I want you to take away from this. Your anxiety about your life falling apart, your fear of things ending, your desperate need to make everything solid and permanent, these aren't personal failings. They're not signs that you're doing life wrong. They're just the natural result of not understanding how reality actually works. You've been trying to hold back a tide that includes the entire universe. And the beautiful, liberating truth is, you can stop. You can let the tide move. You can learn to move with it. And in that movement, in that flexibility, you might just find the peace and stability you were trying to create through control. The universe is going to end. Your current circumstances are going to change. You are going to die. And somehow, understanding this deeply, sitting with it, letting it be true, that's not the problem. That's the beginning of the solution. That's the crack where the light gets in. That's where real freedom starts.